Cool, so welcome to the NWC Show, episode 49. Man, you want to introduce yourself? It's good to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be on. It's good to be on. Some of you might recognize me or know my voice or whatever. I'm the Elitist pal. I do YouTube. I've made videos for a year and a half now, so you may recognize me. And yeah, it's good to be on the show. Good to be on the show. I've watched a couple of these. I always see them in my sub box. It's great to see the NWC podcast, NWC Show. Gotta love it. So it's good to be on. Thanks for having me.
Man, like I say, thanks for taking the time out today. You're a big reason why the channel's where it is, like getting so many subs and views and stuff, because obviously the shouts out stuff you could have done at the start. So I remember, I think I only had like 7 subs or something, and you gave me a shout out, and I went to like 25. So that was a fun moment at the beginning. But let's start with the first question we always ask before we probably start shouting about wrestling and trigger or make people happy. But the first question is, what got you into wrestling? What was that moment you were like, these guys in spandex is the thing that I want to watch?
Oh, good. It's a good question. For me, this story is a weird one. Like, I remember I'm sitting on my couch. I was 8.5 years of age, roughly. I'm flipping channels. It's a random Saturday night in like the middle of August, which in Australia, that's winter. So it's like it's freezing cold. I'm skimming channels. And then I come across one of like the random I don't know, not one of the main channels, just like one of the channels. And then you got the WWE Experience, which is hosted by Matt Stryker, which is like an hour-long like recap show where they run over like the best, most notable talking points each week, which I guess that was a good thing because I was introduced to wrestling with like the main event stuff, I guess. Like I didn't turn on and see Santino Marella having his Cobra, seduced by Jinder Mahal. Like I turned on to see like main event stuff. So the first thing I see is Matt Stryker throwing to this vignette of this tattooed guy with like a white best in the world t-shirt reading text messages from Kevin Nash or text messages from his sister about Kevin Nash. And I was just like, oh, okay. What's this? And then he was, dissing this guy on the microphone. I see this big 7 foot tall guy, Kevin Nash. I'm like, what's this? Is this ring? They've got fans here. What's this? This seems interesting. So then I'd watch each week for a while, for the next few months. I'd watch Matt Stryker recap to me Randy Orton versus Mark Henry. And little 8-year-old me would think, oh, God, Mark Henry is so scary. Mark Henry could kill me. And then I'd watch this and I'd be like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then, yeah, that's basically how I got into wrestling. And I've watched ever since, basically. So,
Yeah, man, I'm older than you, as you can tell with the no hair and stuff like that.
yeah.
But I remember when I first started watching it, it was like just a glimpse on like a TV. I was in my mum's friend's house and I was just standing watching it, but fully getting into it was like 98, 99 when I was like 7-ish. And it was just kind of getting into that, the kind of cut down version of it, so you only get the good points of it.
Yeah.
Which made it fun. Then obviously WCW was still around. We used to get that on a Saturday night here in Scotland, so I got to watch that, and that's how I fell in love with like Sting, Scott Steiner, Goldberg. All those guys were. That was only kind of, obviously it was a cut down show as well, but you really saw a lot more of them than you did the WWF guys. But yeah, it was fun back then, especially and like, getting into wrestling was insane.
I'll add in with that. Sorry to cut you off really quick. I think one of the best things with that, when you're getting into it, it's best you see the big stars, you see the big personalities, and that like draws you into it. Like that's cool. Like I mean, for me personally, obviously as you say there, I'm much younger, so to me, like those guys were like Cena. He was like the big one. CM Punk. You've got The Rock. That was when he was there. Brock came back, a few months into me being a fan, and these like legit like superhero figures. They're like, it's so cool to watch. Which that's kind of morphed my standpoint as a fan and creator nowadays, where I'm not exactly the biggest NXT fan or the biggest, I dare say, AEW fan because of stuff like that, where they revolve the show around guys who look like you and me. So we'll get into that in a moment. We will, but yeah, nonetheless, it's really awesome to just get into wrestling with big stars. Like that's the best.
Man, talking about John Cena, I have a funny story. I remember, I don't know if this is probably before your time as well. He had a CD that came out, and it was like his rap CD. And he was here in Glasgow in a shop called HMV. I don't know if you guys have that there. It's just like a DVD store. And he was there doing like signings and stuff like that. And me being, that kind of, so it must have been like 2006-ish type, 2006, 2005. So I was like, I was kind of just started wrestling training, or I was in it for about a year. So I was being obviously a mark, and I was there, but I was doing one of those like smart marks. So I was like, oh, I'm not interested in getting stuff signed by John Cena. I want these like TNA DVDs at that time.
Oh, wow.
So like, I remember it was behind John Cena. I couldn't get them. The store guy went up, picked up the DVDs, and John Cena was like, you don't want anything signed? And I was like no. But he was like, you need to buy this as well, and gave me like his CD. And I was like, oh, that was an experience. Years later, I'm like, I was such a dick as a kid. But I was in like I was lucky enough to be in a chat with John Cena, like in my real job. I was in a chat with like a group of guys, and I told him that story, and he ended up following me on Twitter. I know it's not a big thing, but it was fun for me. I liked it because I was like, oh, it's cool to follow my wrestling channel, and also kind of full circle. I apologise for being a dick when I was a kid, but
that's tough. That's tough. Like, you got Cena right there. No, I don't want anything signed. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm a big man. I got my TNA DVDs. Like,
actually, I was a couple of years, like not even a couple of years. It must have been a couple of months later. I did get something signed at a show that they were running in Glasgow, but it was just like one of those go buy and get stuff signed. So I got a John Cena thing signed, and the long story short is it turned into me getting my first girlfriend, kinda. So that was fun. No, girlfriend, but it was fun. You don't know what I'm talking about. I don't want to say it because I don't know, I have kids watch this or something. But I was like, it was another cool story I got to tell him as well. So John Cena's been a big part of my life, man. Growing up, he was like in that whole teenage years. That's when he was there. And it was just
Also with Cena, were you one of those guys? I mean, you mentioned you kind of like had this experience in what, 05, 06? So were you one of those edgy teenagers who'd like boo him when he was supposed to be the guy, or were you always like, yeah, let's go Cena? Was that you? Like,
no, man, I was literally the only time that I really hated Cena. I'm a huge Cena fan. Like I think he's not the best wrestler, but he's pretty much like the Hulk Hogan of that era.
Yeah.
But I hated him when he done the ECW one night stand stuff, because at that time ECW was a really thing that I was into, but I loved it as well because he played into the crowd's reaction. He's like a fun guy to hate. Back then it was just easy to hate him, but you had to respect him because he was the biggest star in the business, and nobody's been bigger than him since, arguably. But I don't think anybody will ever get above John Cena. You can say like CM Punk and stuff like that, but he's no like mainstream. Cena's like everywhere, and maybe Batista, but I think he's more famous for movies than what he was for wrestling.
At this point, yeah, for sure.
So, man, the next question that we've got is obviously we were talking about before the show and that kind of stuff. This is when we get into what's probably going to trigger people. So we'll start with the positives, because there's very little positives to pick today. But what's something that you really like about today's wrestling world? For me, it's how much wrestling there is. It's also the negative. But what's something that you like about it?
For me, I think one of the things I like most about wrestling and why I still follow it's more so like the dream matches side of things. The whole thing of, because it's like a never-ending storybook. I think that's how Stephanie described it once, but it's like a constantly going story. Like the WWE and wrestling's chapters never end unless the company goes out of business. But like, generally speaking, for me, I think the answer to that question is the whole concept of, oh my God, imagine if this tribal chief Roman Reigns has a match with The Rock. Imagine that. Or, oh my God, imagine Roman Reigns as the tribal chief against John Cena. Like, oh my, that'd be amazing. Like that kind of thing, like, keeps you going. Because in between, you get a bunch of the moments where you're like, why do I still watch this? As you've got like Elias and Jackson Riker throwing tomatoes at Randy Orton, and like stuff like that is, I think we can both agree, neither of us watch it for that, but you watch it for the stuff with the larger than life main event wrestlers, the Roman Reigns', your Drew McIntyre's, your Bobby Lashley's, Karrion Kross, even these types, having these big marquee dream matches. That's kind of why, at least I'm still going with it. Like, I'm a lot younger than you are, so I'm sure your reasoning is probably, I mean, you mentioned there with different promotions, but yeah, that's my reason. That's my answer. So yeah,
I'd probably say, like I says, it's how much of it is there. It's so you can watch anything. There's wrestling for everybody. Then on the flip side, that is a negative as well. There's too much wrestling to watch. There's no like 5 companies. There's 50,000 companies that are wanting everybody's attention, from YouTube to, like, on the WWE network, you've got your old stuff like WCW, ECW, NWA. Then you've got obviously your new stuff. You've got the Scottish wrestling show that's on there, ICW, Evolve, which is just, I think it's just too much to like. You could literally watch a different wrestling show every day and never have to watch the same one, which is too much wrestling, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, and like that's the thing. It's like even if you're like the biggest wrestling fan and you love wrestling, how do you have the time? How can you have the time to watch all of it? Because like I'm not gonna go through and name all the shows because I'd be here for like 15 minutes and that'll get tiresome. But just like I've seen these tweets from people who are like, guys, there's so much good wrestling right now, and they like legit name every company, every show, and you've got like literally 4 AW shows. WWE has like shows out the wazoo, and some of them are 3 and 2 hours long, and just too many shows. Lots of promotions, which, as you say, there definitely good variety. There is absolutely something for everyone, and whether that's really like kinky niche wrestling with like just bizarre stuff, or whether it's godly wrestling like Roman Reigns, for instance, like there's something for everyone. So yeah,
Yeah, man, definitely. The thing is, so heading into the negative part, it's normally what do you dislike about today's product, but we can just roll that into anything that we're going to start moaning about. But the thing that really gets me about the wrestling community, here I'm just going to upset like a ton of people that will watch this,
yeah, go
is when
for it.
people go like New Japan wrestling. So New Japan's got really great wrestling, and it's like that nobody's really watching New Japan wrestling at this side of the world. Like, it's here in Scotland to watch New Japan, you're kind of it's it's difficult. Like, even I don't know how it is in Australia because I know you are a touch closer than what I'm here in Scotland.
Yeah,
But it's like, you, what channel are they on? Or get the Fight Network. I'm not going to sit and watch like fighting, and I've got like all these indie promotions that I don't really care about. I've just triggered everybody I've had on this podcast, but it's like, stop acting as if everybody's going to be watching Japanese wrestling. It's a niche product. No, if you're a wrestling fan, you're going to go out your way and maybe watch some Japanese stuff, or you will watch it. But if you're just a casual fan that's picking up WWE, watching AEW every now and again, you're not going to go out your way to see what Kenny Omega done in Japan. Do you know what I mean? It's like, calm down. Stop acting as if everybody's sitting watching the shit that's on just now 24 hours a day. It's no like the 90s when there wasn't anything else to do. Plus, if you're sitting watching New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, AEW, NXT, NXT UK, however many promotions there is, you'd be bored out, you're like burnt out by wrestling by the end of the week.
oh god, yeah, god, yeah. Like I don't even know, like, because when I watch wrestling nowadays, I mean, I watch pay-per-views, and that's mainly about it. Like, if I'm watching just like wrestling TV shows, I mean, this can be Raw, SmackDown, New Japan Strong, Ring of Honor, their show, any of them. Like, I just kind of feel like unproductive almost because, like, I don't know with you. I mean, you obviously have a much different perspective, but to me, it's not you've seen one match, you've seen them all, because matches come in many ways, shapes, and forms. But I feel like I've seen enough wrestling for this stage of my life where I don't need to watch every single match. So it's like, you have all these countless variety of wrestling shows, and there's so much variety. And then, as you talk about there, the people who are just diehard New Japan fans or diehard X promotion fans, and it's like, how dare you disrespect insert wrestler name here? And I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't sit around watching 6 hours of insert wrestler name here highlights, and I can't name the best star rated matches of this wrestler for hours and hours. Like, that's just me. I have a life, you have one. We live different existences. Like, it's fine. You can breathe, you can calm down. Don't try and get my Twitter taken down, please. I've worked too hard on it. Like, that's the kind of thing you deal with. So, yeah, it's just a wrestling community thing, I guess, my guy.
I man, but I just think it's just, I just, one thing is I always say when I talk to wrestling fans and they're like, did you watch like New Japan Pro Wrestling? I'm like, no, no, I'm not going to go out my way to watch New Japan. it's not something that appeals to me. It's not something that I do for this channel. The reason I started this channel was to get back into wrestling because I was watching pay-per-views and I was really balls deep into WCW. I was like, I'm watching all this old stuff. Why don't I not just talk about the new stuff and review it? It was fun, and it is still fun. I love talking about it because I like moaning about it. But it's just kind of, I don't know. So obviously talking about problems with wrestling is Raw. It's terrible. Plus, we're allowed to swear in this. I don't know if you're a Christian or some shit, but I'm from Scotland. You swear no matter what. It's like 3% of your population is religious. So, Raw's fucking shit, man. It's literally the worst show that you can get. People say, why do you keep watching it? Because I literally remember watching great Raws. New Attitude Era wasn't great, but they had Austin, they had Rock, Taker, Ken Shamrock, Mark Henry back then. Like, you had tons of guys that were good, putting on good matches, and then now you still got the guys are still putting on good matches, but it makes no fucking sense. Who really cares what Nia Jax is doing? Why has she got a TikTok? Why is she even killing kayfabe even more? Why are you dancing? By the way, Shayna Baszler's 41 this year.
Yeah,
I didn't know she was that old. I was like, what the fuck? And why are you in a tag team? Give her the belt. She's not going to be there that much longer. But and then how did they mess up somebody so great as Rhea Ripley? I'm a huge Rhea Ripley mark, and they just, for some reason, made her seem that she's no the women's champion when she's a women's champion. How can you fuck that up so much?
Yeah, I mean, as an Australian, the fact that they used Rhea Ripley the way they do hurts. I think, I mean, we can talk about her in a moment, but just generally, Monday Night Raw, I mean, you used some very non-Christian words to describe it there. No, I mean, fun fact, my ancestry is actually Scottish, but like, I don't really swear much. I'm a family-friendly channel there, John. But yeah, nah. So, and back to Raw. I think with Raw, I mean, we could be here for hours going over the problems with it, but I think one conversation that'll be fun for this podcast, and I want to get your perspective on this. I think wrestling TV shows generally, I think just the general format of them is just outdated. Because I think we're in a TikTok generation. People's attention spans are hardly longer than a minute. And then every Monday, you've got a Lord of the Rings length show with 50 minutes worth of commercials. And you've got rinse, repeat of, like, literally, I said this, I don't know what video, because I do too many videos, my guy, but I said this in one video. The last 8 Raws, ever since WrestleMania, you could just show me any one of those Raws. I could not tell you which show it was. It's just all the same thing for the last 8 weeks. And like anyway, back to the initial point about wrestling TV. I think wrestling TV shows, the format is decades outdated. I think here's a 9-minute match that we know isn't a real match, but here's 9 minutes of wrestling. Oh, commercial. Oh, here's 5 more minutes of wrestling. Here's a great roll up of death finish. Like the format needs to change. What do you think of that?
Man, I've always said the format needs to change. Why don't they bring in more sponsors? Cut Raw right down to an hour. You're only putting on the stuff that needs to be there. You can sum up the story using social media, so like Facebook, Lives, YouTube, whatever. But you can do extra stuff on that. You don't need to have 3 hours. Just cut it down to an hour. Everybody will say that's far too short. But you have 2, 3 really good matches on it. A couple of segments where people are actually speaking just to the camera themselves with maybe an interviewer. And then the rest of it gets done on the WWE network, utilise that more to get the subscribers up, make more money. But what they're doing just now is just what worked in like the 2000s, which doesn't work today. Like you said, it's like TikTok generation. Like people sit down and watch a Netflix series. WWE need to realise that people aren't going to sit down and watch wrestling for weeks at a time to catch up on it, especially in like the network. You're not getting it 6 weeks behind it. So people are probably going to watch Raw 6 weeks behind because why would they catch up? But by the time the 6 weeks behind comes up, they've lost interest in watching Raw because why would I've just looked on Twitter, seen how shit it was, so why am I going to watch it? Which is, it's like, so it's not an easy problem to fix, obviously, because you're turning your back on a ton of money, but you cut that down to an hour. Doesn't need to be edgy, keep it PG, that's fine. It doesn't need to be edgy. You can keep your edgy stuff for when you're on like the network and stuff like that. Cut it down to an hour, get sponsors in, because the UFC don't really have like outside sponsors apart from their normal ones that they've got. You get sponsors in, like WCW did with Slim Jims. Get Slim Jims back in, put them on, just fucking sell the hell out of them. They'll pay you a ton of money to be on TV, but you've only got an hour, so you're going to only have the best matches. So like Roman Reigns isn't going to sit and come out and do a fucking 15-minute promo at the start of any show, a 30-minute promo, which they're normally good. I love Roman Reigns, but it's like, going to just get this and done with, make him look merry a badass. Like, have him put that up on social media, and that keeps kayfabe and keeps wrestling fans happy. And then you've only got an hour show that you can sum up into a half an hour. We catch up at the weekend, and that's you sorted. But no, they won't do that, and I'm just shouting.
Yeah, no, like I think just generally, it's just the format. I mean, I just said this, but it's 52 weeks a year, 3 hours. It's not it. It's not it. Like wrestling, I always think it just needs to be like a great TV show. Like if they did it as a season, I don't know how long the season would be, maybe 6 months worth, but 1 hour long shows per week, focus on character development. Roman Reigns, instead of doing a 15-minute promo, can literally do an entrance, say, I'm the tribal chief, acknowledge me, and leave. He doesn't need to do a 15-minute promo segment. You can cut out all of like the nonsense and filler. If you need to have Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax in a segment, have it be a 2-minute match and get them out of there. Just have a show where if you miss 5 minutes, you've missed something. Like I don't know. That's what I think. Just they need to change something badly, just badly. Like,
Man, 100%. And for me as well, I would go to smaller arenas. So don't sell it out like the big, huge arenas. Go to like the cool little quirky arenas that everybody like likes to, like the way Raw used to do. Go to like all these kind of cool little mini arenas. Charge higher ticket prices, obviously, but you're going to get people that are actually there that want to see the show. And then, like you say, just put stuff on that people want to see. Like, like who really cares about Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler as a tag team? Like, and then you've got Natalia, and like, how did they manage to mess up Natalia? Like, that's like literally, she's like the Heart Foundation stuff is right there, and I know they tried it and still failed it, but it's right there, and like she's just to blame with like the cat ears and stuff like that, which is so annoying. Like, just do your job, stop being an arsehole. But
so you're telling me, and you're telling all the listeners that when you tune into a 3-hour show and you see Jackson Riker and Elias, two giant buff ripped wrestlers backstage giggling, throwing tomatoes at Randy Orton, that doesn't entertain you? You're not proud to show your friends that? What do you mean?
And when that happened, my kids walked away. They just left the room. Like, I was like, you need to watch that. Like, you need to watch wrestling. It's going to be good. So I want to get them into it because they do like MMA and stuff that I used to do. And I was like, no, watch wrestling.
Why'd you show them Raw then? Why'd you show them Raw?
I thought like this is meant to be for kids, and they literally just stood up and walked away. And I was like, oh my god, what have I done? I've turned them out of wrestling. But they like watching the old kind of like John Cena, the old Brock Lesnar stuff, then like all that kind of stuff. They like that, but Raw's just terrible, man. I know Jackson Riker in real life. He's a sound guy. I know a lot of people think he's a racist and that kind of stuff, which that's everybody's personal opinion. I'm Scottish. Everybody has their personal opinion. You don't really care. As long as they're all right with you, they're all right person. But in real life, I've met him. He was perfectly fine with me. He could be a dick. I don't really care. He's all right. He's a bit of a Christian, and he does like readings of like Bible readings on like a Sunday on Facebook, which I think he's a dick for because, like, you're doing like wrestling and then now you're talking to a guy in the sky like Camden. But so I've just triggered the whole Christian population in Australia if they're listening. I'm sorry, but no, man. But wrestling's just it's not just Raw as well. Like, this bleeds into AEW, which are pretty much just trying to do what TNA done in 2010 by just taking hits at WWE. And if everybody always lets it slide for AEW because they're just a new company. I do the exact same thing. They're still new, or they've got your younger guys in there. But it makes no sense what they're doing. There's far too many factions or stables, as somebody pointed out. They're two different things. They're literally the same thing. Nobody that has ever stepped in the ring has ever thought stables and factions were different. They're the same thing. You're no smart for thinking they're different. They're no. But it's just the AEW as well is having the same issues. In wrestling at the minute, it's just really, really stale for everybody. And you can say they're putting on 5-star matches, There hasn't really been a
Stop
5-star
it.
match.
Stop
There,
it.
but
5-star
there
match.
hasn't. No, I mean across the board, there hasn't been a 5-star match anywhere in a few years, and that goes for everybody. You can't say, but Randy Orton's probably the biggest star in wrestling that's left now. But
Yeah. But wait, hold up. So you're telling me Omega versus Orange Cassidy versus Park isn't a 5-star match? How dare you? What?
don't even bring them up, man. I cannot stand Orange Cassidy. Why are you, man? Do you know it's so it's like, oh, but it's such a cool work. No, it's not. He just looks like a dick. Like he just looks like he's just. It just looks so weird. And then Pac as well. I've met him in real life, and some of my friends have said he's a dick. So I kind of just be like, I'm not interested in him. And Kenny Omega, he's not as good as everybody makes it. He's probably one of the best today, but he's not as good as everybody makes it. Like I say, I'm just here to bury myself. But he's not as good as everybody makes it. Like what he's basically took the Japanese style and brought it here, and it's not working.
Yeah.
It's no changing. It's like John Moxley. Like who was better, Dean Ambrose or John Moxley? Dean Ambrose, you'd have to say, because it was more interesting to watch. John Moxley, why has he got a Wild Things theme tune? And why does he always come for the back? But why are you coming for the back, kicking a door? That door's getting more action than most people that are watching wrestling at the minute. And it's so annoying.
Yeah. It's a quick question. I mean, you mentioned showing your kids like wrestling and whatnot, and you showed them Raw. Have you showed your kids like Orange Cassidy? And if so, what do they think of him? Because I need that perspective. Because like I watch him. I'm 18, so I'm supposed to be like the demographic who's finds him cool. I'm just like, this is a 36-year-old man pretending to kick people. Like, what is this? Like,
man, I can't do that. I think the coffin's already nearly sealed with wrestling for them. That would be the final nail. So I'm not letting that go in yet. I'm like, just keep that out, keep a little bit of the hope going. But no, I can't do it. I don't know who Orange Cassidy's for. Like you says, it's meant to be for demographic like that, the younger side of the 18 to 35. But nobody really, like, you can't sit down and say you're a fan of watching him put his hands in his pockets and half-arse what he's doing in the ring. Like, it's just a joke. Like, it really, yeah, it's just a joke. And
he's so over. He's so over. And this goes back to the general AEW thing. He's over with their audience. The guys, like when they have touring crowds, the 500 to 3,000 people who'll be jammed into an arena for AEW, Orange Cassidy's over with them. Amazing. Good. GG. Good for you. But like, we're talking about this now. You show them to your kids. You're mortified and embarrassed. They think, what is this? Why should I think this is cool? I see him and think, this is wrestling. This is the guy in the world title match at AEW's WrestleMania. This is the guy who's fighting Kenny Omega. This is the like it comes off just as uncool, which kind of goes back to the first question with like, why do you watch wrestling? I watch wrestling because the concept of these big superhero like guys fighting each other seems cool to me. I don't watch it for a dude who's like a 36-year-old man pretending to be a high schooler, putting his hands in his pockets to be rebellious. If that's entertaining to you, I'm amazed for you and very happy. But just for the mass majority who are more casual, you see this and think, dude, stop. Just stop. Like,
and it's like when the Japanese guy, I've totally forgot his name, debuted and like attacked Kenny Omega, and then the story got told in like the New Japan thing that they were doing. But it's like, so my fiance was watching that and she's like, who's this guy? And I said that to somebody that's been on the podcast. I was like, oh, she didn't know who this guy was. And he was like, oh, but he was in WWE, he was in NXT. And she's not watching NXT either. And I don't understand what, nobody else is watching NXT apart from the same people that are watching AEW. And that's the truth, unfortunately. Wrestling, like actual traditional way wrestling is, that as much as Jim Cornette will say that it was huge in the 70s and 80s, that's cool. The 70s and 80s passed away, but what made it cool was Austin drinking beer, flipping the bird to Vince McMahon, being rebellious, DX, telling people to go suck it. All that kind of stuff, being edgy, made it fun. Like it was, I remember being in school and doing the DX sign and people getting kicked out for it. I remember stunning one of my friends. My last name name's Kane, so I was always the wrestler when you're kidding on that you were playing wrestling. I was the guy who was always had to go Kane, which was annoying, but like it was edgy. And how the hell did Undertaker and Kane get over it? Especially because one's meant to be been burnt alive, and the other was like a dead person, but they got that over because it was the edgy stuff was there, and you let that kind of stuff slide. That was there for your kids, but they still done that edgy stuff. Now you've just got like who like really racking my brain to be like, this is going to like Roman Reigns is the only person at the minute that is probably going to be like for kids all the way through to adults. He's doing the cool stuff, he looks cool and all that kind of stuff, but
yeah,
there's nothing really else. There's nothing. He's literally the only person in WWE off the top of your head would be like, I would show somebody one of his recent kind of stuff, because he's the only person that's really doing anything good. Even Orton, I'm going to get on to it, man. I know I'm going to trigger the Scottish wrestling scene, so Drew McIntyre shouldn't be in the position he's in now. They need to put him down to go against Jinder Mahal. Let him go for like a year run with him. Put on killer matches, like no week in, week out. Tell a story. Put a killer match on every month. But
yeah,
it's just like they've messed. For some reason, they have been able to take Drew McIntyre, who's a good wrestler, who was over, and push him too much. Like, somehow can you take something really good and destroy it? Like, WWE is great at that. Like, if you ever want to break something, just get it to WWE. They're going to break it.
That's great. That's great. Like, just hearing that, like, I'm just thinking a lot, and like, well, two things, and I'll get, we'll have your thoughts on this in a moment, I think, but there are two things. One, we're talking about Kenta, Hideo Itami. He comes into AEW and supposed to be this big, like, oh my God. And it's like, I mean, you mentioned it there. It's like most regular people think, who is this? He's a Japanese man on AEW. Like, okay, cool. But like, that's the thing. When did WWE start catering to that? It was like early 2010s, I feel like. I mean, Punk did his pipe bomb, and then that made, the vocal minority, so to speak, more empowered, I think. And then Daniel Bryan won the title, and that's like, oh, dude, listen, they listen to us. We're going to demand these wrestlers get pushed, and they will get pushed. And then the NXT invasion comes in, like Neville, and you get Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, and these guys, they all come in WWE, they all get signed. And then you get Finn Balor showing up in like his first night and winning the Universal title, and that like validates it even more. And then here we are today, where like wrestler A shows up and beats up someone on Dynamite, and it's like, who's this? Oh, but they had 5-star matches in a garage in Japan 6 years ago. Therefore, you need to like them. Like, get out of here. Like, they're not. There's nothing different about this guy to this guy. These guys look like me. Like just like a 5'9", 5'10", just like skinnier dude. Like that. Like, what is this? So generally speaking, I think. What was this? So yeah, there was that with the wrestlers, and also the other question I'll ask. I mean, on your take on this, who is WWE for? I mean, WWE specifically, but like, who are they for? Like, because what they sell to people, what Stephanie McMahon sells to people, and just the business sells itself, is our WWE superstars empower millions. Our superstars are used as role models. And I'm like, well, when I'm watching Jackson Riker throw a tomato at Randy Orton, how's that meant to empower me? How's it meant to empower? Like, your kids watch Jackson Riker throw a tomato at Randy Orton, they leave the room and think, F this, I'm not watching this. Like, I don't know. Do with that what you will. Here's the 4. Like,
no, I don't know who it's for. I literally don't. I work in marketing and advertising and have no clue who they're trying to market and advertise to. It's obviously they think they're marketing to kids, but that's no their market. What made them famous was obviously that 18 to 49 age group where you can push the envelope. They're looking for like edgier stuff to really get invested in. And that's what kids look up to, because that's what they want to be. When you're a kid, you always want to be older. When you're older, you want to be younger. So, like, Disney's normally marketing towards the parent, because the parent will tell the kid that Disney's good and they'll buy them stuff. And then when the kid's older, they'll be a fan of Disney, who then will tell their kids. That's the whole point of the way Disney work. But I don't know who WWE's for at all. Like, even AEW, they're for that 18 to 49 crowd, but WWE's just like, who, and it's so flip-floppy as well, the writing. It's like the tomato stuff, and then like they try to be edgy, but it's not being edgy. It's just kind of awkwardly, like just awkward. Like the stuff with Apollo Crews. Like Apollo Crews is a great wrestler, but the Nigerian drum match. What was that? Why was that a thing?
Yeah, look, I couldn't tell you. I wish I could explain. I wish I could explain the Nigerian drum match and sound like a real informed wrestling source to your listeners here. Like I couldn't. I don't know. And yeah, that's one of the big things of wrestling. Like it goes back to just the writing of it. I mean, nowadays we've got just wrestling fans writing the shows. Well, outside WWE is a weird one. Like we can talk about that at length, but outside WWE, wrestling fans are writing the shows all across the business. So you're getting just former wrestlers or wrestling fans being like, "Oh, these two guys could put on a really good match. Let's book them," and then that's it. And then WWE is, I mean, I'm sure you have plenty to say about this, but yeah, their writing process, I don't even understand it. Like I could try and pretend I do, but I just don't get it. It makes no sense.
No, man, there's too many writers there. Probably there's too many people that are trying to put their narrative into wrestling. Like so, instead of just sticking with one person and letting them go for a few years, they're just they've got 50 writers or however many they've got, and it's like it's not going to work. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like what they're doing. But on the topic of WWE is, what did you think about the recent releases? What did you think about Braun getting let go or Black? Nobody's really surprised about Lana, but what about the rest of them?
Yeah, now my story with that, so that was, as of recording this was like a day and a half ago, just about. Like this was, for me, I woke up and then I checked my phone and then the timeline is erupting with pictures of like Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman's been released by WWE. I was like, I thought I just woken up. I thought I was just saying things or dreaming. So I'm like, wait, what? Like Braun Strowman, he was in the WWE title match 2 weeks ago. Like what? And like this is the thing with WWE, and it's like, and just wrestling in general, but mainly WWE, things move so fast that it feels like nothing matters. Like Braun Strowman was just in the title match 2 weeks ago, and now he's not there anymore. And so now, like, because of that, and because of these releases, it makes you think, or at least makes me think, why should I really get invested in pretty much anyone if they could just be gone tomorrow? Because WWE is such a business to where, oh, we're going to prepare for our sell-off. We're going to get rid of Braun Strowman because his contract is too expensive. At least I think that's why they did it. I don't even know. But yeah, to answer the question, the releases, most of them weren't surprising. Like, I get Aleister Black just came back to SmackDown and now he's just gone. And it's like, oh, okay. And like Buddy Murphy, I'm Australian, so I guess I should be horrified he got released. I mean, a bit disappointing, but he'll be employed by AEW. He'll be having great 5-star matches with Jungle Boy on Dynamite, so that'll be fine. And then Lana, she makes money out the wazoo from TikTok modeling. She'll be signed by AEW, no doubt, so it's good by her. Ruby Riott, she'll be signed by Impact probably, and then Santana Garrett sounds like an Impact name to me. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What do you think?
Man, it was a shock. Like you said, Bronze and literally was there for the title. And then just like, well, you know what, we're going to do Drew and Bobby Lashley Hell in the Cell, but sorry, Braun, you need to leave. No, just the room, the whole company. You have to go. And especially when they done that, was it WWE 24, the documentary, and he was talking about like mental health and suffering with anxiety and stuff like that. And I feel like that's a pretty bit inappropriate just to give him like this, oh, I suffer with anxiety and talk about mental health, and it's like, right, that's you, sacked, get out.
Yeah,
but
wow. Also, like, could you imagine in like 1999, Paul White is like one of the biggest deals in the company. He has the cage match with Austin at St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and 2 weeks later, there's like on WWF.com, Paul White has been released by WWE, and it's like not a storyline. Like he's just gone. Like it's so weird. It's like this guy was in the match 2 weeks ago, and he's gone. I can't wrap my head around that. That's nuts. Like.
Same with like Aleister Black. They started putting like money in him, and then it was like, you need to leave, man. It's not going to work. But more than likely, AEW is going to pick these guys up, Impact Wrestling, and just no use them. We'll see them on the YouTube show, like AEW Dark, AEW Elevation, I think it's called.
Yep.
The-
AW Dark Elevation. You'll get to watch former WWE superstar Tommy End have a good match with a random bum off the street. Like that's what it's gonna be. And I mean, fair play. That's some of those guys like Aleister Black and Buddy Murphy. Just they're tailor made for AW. So they'll get picked up no problem. Hopefully, at least from like a mental health standpoint, everyone's doing good and there's no one goes off the rails because of this. Hopefully everyone's good. But yeah, I just think it's so catches you off guard. And then I guess I'll ask you now, do you think WWE's preparing for a sell-off?
100%, man. Like we were saying before, like there's no other way that obviously they've got a new president in. They're going to be trying to cut costs, but they've had a record profit year last year. So letting people go at the rate that they're doing looks like they're trying to get a sell-off. Obviously, Disney's been playing around with looking at buying them for a while. You've got NSBC, Amazon might come in because they've got the OVW stuff. But I definitely, man, I think they're going to try and get that down. Like, get their costs away down, profits even higher, and just be like, who wants to buy this? Because Vince doesn't want to give it to any of his kids.
Yeah, like I guess one of the strategies they're going for, I mean, I'm no like economist or no like business capitalist who understands this fully, but just with the business mind I have, you look at it and think, similar to what you say there, they've got one like they're having the most profitable quarter seemingly every quarter now. The quarter two for them, which is April through June. Ideally, I think what they're going to try and do is have a quarter where they get rid of a bunch of this talent, so they get all that money off the payroll, and there's no like they're not touring yet, so they're not going to have touring costs. So they're probably going to have the most profitable quarter ever for WWE, and they'll push that to Disney, NBC, whoever, and be like, look, we're the most profitable we've ever been. Look how much money we're making. You can take us on board, and we'll be a great venture for you. Vince will get his $5 to $8 billion, or however much he gets for the sale, and then happy days for Vince. And then NBC or whoever's stuck with WWE, this like not useless entity because there's a bunch of stuff there, but it's just like, oh well, now we're stuck with this. 1.2 million people watching Raw every week. SmackDown is one guy, and the rest of the people aren't doing anything. Like, yeah, that's what I think at least. So, yeah,
Definitely, man. Especially like if it's like me and making those kind of big deals for billions, it's not going to be done like overnight. You're not closing a deal for like a couple of $100. It's like a lot of money. So they've probably been watching WWE for the past year, see how they've coped with the pandemic, seen that it was one of the best things that have coped through it. That it was only real kind of thing that was still able to kind of stay there. Then they'll be like, well, how can we let's start to look to buy it? We've been in talks for a while. I think it only makes sense that they're going to sell it to somebody. But it's like, do they sell it and it makes it good, or do they sell it and just wrestling just dies as we know it? Because, like we said before the show, is AEW the saviour? I highly doubt it. I don't think there's a saviour of wrestling just now. I think it needs to go back to the dark days when it's just in garages and stuff like that. And then somebody will come back, hopefully somebody will come back and take it to new heights, because maybe Vince has just realised, like, I've made this monster, sports entertainment, which is terrible. Let's kill it and let's make pro wrestling again.
yeah. I mean, Vince said that in a promo in what was it, '01? Like, I created this. By God, I'm gonna kill it. I mean, he's done a pretty good job in the past decade. I commend him on that. Like, my God, because I mean, the other week I was looking at just like ratings from like when I started watching back in 2011, and they were getting 5.5 million people watching Raw each week. And yet you just see that just down it goes. And this past week, 1.42 million people watch Raw. And like I saw that and was like, that's pitiful. I mean, it's justified, as we've talked about, but it's just pitiful. So yeah, I think when it comes to the sale, I think a fun question I could ask you. I mean, you talk about like you're working in marketing and all this kind of stuff. If you're on the WWE marketing team, how do you pitch that in like a big meeting? You're trying to get WWE as much money as possible. How do you pitch it to like an investor, would you say?
Or to an investor, they would make a ton of cash.
How would you sell the WWE? Like, you know, like,
obviously you just talk about legacy, the library. You're going to have all this. It's the only sport that's got, like, you can literally go watch WCW from start to finish. You can do the same with ECW. You can go watch the AWA, the Smoky Mountain Wrestling, some of the stuff that I've got. Like, it's an insane library plus all the stuff that they've got sitting in like their warehouses, like old WCW rings and all that kind of stuff. You can literally sell. It's insane. Like you could just go, okay, we're going to auction off this warehouse and make another couple 100 million, and then would you be interested in buying it now because we've got this other 100 million sitting in the bank? Like it would be probably one of the easiest sales in history. Obviously the ratings are down, but it's not just for the ratings, it's the past stuff. Like Star Wars got bought by Disney because nothing about their new movies, it was all the kind of past stuff that they wanted to buy. And that's the exact same thing WWE is just going to like kind of transition to sell. Plus, if you look at it, the 1.1 million, if they go under a million, it's not going to hurt them. They've got enough from advertising and enough from like the Peacock deal recently and all that kind of stuff. It looks like they're setting up for a sale. And if it's the investors in the company, if you're going to be trying to pitch it to them, we're all going to be living on a beach. We're going to make 10 billion. Who cares?
Yeah.
I would. If Disney was like, if I was in head of WWE, I'd be like, cool. You can have, but imagine the Disney rides, like the wrestling Disney rides and all that kind of stuff. Man, I just quit. I'll just need to just review old wrestling for the rest of my life. I couldn't do it. That would ruin it. But it would probably be the easiest sell in history. If you were trying to sell like an NFL team or a football soccer team here in Scotland, like you try to sell them, people are going to jump at the chance to buy them because it makes consistent cash every single week. Like
right, yeah.
Profitability is up, so they're going to sell it easy.
I thought that'd be an interesting question for you, especially considering like your field of expertise. So, yeah, no, I just think when it comes to WWE, I mean, I've made some comparisons to The Simpsons. Like one of the things with The Simpsons is that they had a big boom in the 90s. Oh yeah, I couldn't even tell that. That's actually great. No, big boom in the 90s, and then ever since it's kind of just tailed off. And I mean, The Simpsons, that's called Zombie Simpsons for a reason. Like it's the writers that made the show great in the 90s are just long gone, and it's the same characters and it's the same brand, The Simpsons, but it's a completely different thing altogether. And that's really the same thing with WWE. It's like, yeah, it's still World Wrestling Entertainment / Federation, but this isn't the what made it great in the 90s. This isn't what this isn't Austin, Rock, Undertaker, Undertaker crucifying Stephanie. Like, this isn't that. This is tomatoes being thrown at Randy Orton. Like, that's what it is now. I think, as you talk about in a meeting, with investors and all this kind of stuff, you sell the fact that WWE is like the Disney of wrestling. This is the brand. You get to own like the wrestling promotion because, yeah, AEW has a hardcore audience of 750,000 pure wrestling fans, but like, come on. It's all elite wrestling. You go up to 100 people randomly on the street, say, what is AEW? And maybe 2 will be like, oh, that's all elite wrestling. And the rest will be like, what is an AEW? Like, huh? Like,
man, you could literally be like, what's WWE to 100 people? And they'd be like, is that thing that they used to do in the 90s? Or was that John Cena thing? Or like, it's the thing with The Rock in it? Like, it's nobody really knows about it, but then it is a profit-making business. So that's what investors want. That's the thing as well. Like, they're setting themselves up to make more money so that then they can sell it. And also when you've got people that are sitting saying, oh, when fans come back, it's going to save wrestling. It's like, it's going to take more than people coming back to save wrestling. Like, it's, I don't know, it'll be cool to see people back there, but that's not going to change how terrible the writing has been recently. They're still going to do it, just people are going to be there booing.
Yeah, like I mean, I'll keep using this analogy just for the sake of the podcast for entertainment, but like, Jackson Riker throws tomatoes at Randy Orton. Okay, that's fine. But if Jackson Riker throws tomatoes at Randy Orton and there's 2,000 people watching live, does that make the tomato throwing any better? Well, no, it's still tomato throwing. Like, it's bad content's bad content. So it doesn't really matter if there's one person in attendance, whether there's 5,000 or 40,000. Oh, 40,000. Okay, fair. But like, if there's a couple thousand people, who cares? So, yeah, no, that's the case with that. Is there a question you want to ask now, or?
So we're heading to the end of the podcast anyway. I'll go in for the final 3 questions. So first of all is, who's your favourite wrestler of all time?
Oh, this is. I mean, I mentioned him to begin. CM Punk is things that have happened in recent years surrounding UFC and some of his takes have made me go. Not the biggest fan of the Phil Brooks of recent years, but CM Punk from 2011 through 2014, which I consider the apex of my fandom, he was my favorite. I thought he was just fantastic. So, yeah, that's me.
It's a cool one, man. I'm more at his ECW run back when he first kind of started in WWE. I thought that was a cool run, even though it was terrible. Second one is, what's your favourite event of all time? Any event that you're just like, you'd sit somebody down and be like, this is what you need to check out.
I'd probably go with the event that drew the most pay-per-view buys of any event ever, WrestleMania 28. Now, I think with this one, it's a number of things. You've got Rock and Cena, two guys who you can show to anyone, and it's like, oh, I know The Rock, or I know Cena, or I know them both. That's really sick. They're having a match. So the once in a lifetime thing, that felt epic. Like that's like my generation's Rock and Hogan, or like a Hogan Andre. That's like, oh my god, they're doing a main event like that. Which like hopefully they do Rock and Reigns next year or the year after. I hope they do. So like you can have that like one last icon versus icon match. But anyway, back to the question. Once in a lifetime was awesome. End of an era was amazing with Michaels and not Michaels, Taker and Triple H. The Hell in a Cell. Some of the best near falls ever in wrestling was in that match. And then Punk and Jericho, my favorite wrestler in WWE title match. So can't beat 28. That's me.
Man, the Hogan Rock thing was my like moment that I remember watching it and just being like, wrestling's so good, just because it's like how polarized the crowd was and stuff like that. It was such a great moment.
Did you watch that live?
Actually, my friend's dad recorded it for like on a DVD, and we watched it the day after because it was too late. But I remember just potting like I was a kid, but I remember just like potting the fact that The Rock got the win over Hogan, because I was like, Hogan's definitely going to win. Like, there's no way they're going to give it to The Rock because it's Hogan. But it was a great moment in wrestling, and it's kind of been downhill since then. But
yeah, also,
final question.
Quick question to you. So, I mean, if you could have like in any match ever, like, and you could go back in time and be in the front row of a show, what match would you pick for that? Because for me, I'd pick that one, Rock and Hogan. Like, I think that would be just being in the front row of that would just be like, oh my god. So, what do you think?
I think Rock and Hogan would probably be. Try to think. Rock and Hogan or no, Rock and Hogan. It would need to be that one, wouldn't it? Because it's just such an insane like, or Taker versus Mankind, Hell in a Cell, just to see Mick Foley just kill himself. But ties into your final question, man. This is one that I've been dying to ask you, because this is a question I never sent to anybody, so I keep it a secret. As I'll tell you what my answer is, and then what I'll do is I'll get your answer. So, if you could add yourself to or replace anybody in any match in history, what would it be? For me, I would replace Owen Hart against Bret Hart, Blue Steel Cage match, SummerSlam '94, because I think that's the perfect match. It's one of my favourite matches ever, but only if I was as good as Owen Hart. Obviously, as I always say, I don't want to ruin the legacy of that, but I would like to be in that match because it's such a cool match. What would your one be?
Oh, that's such a cool question. God, there's a couple. I think when you ask that, my mind shifts to Rock and Austin from 17. I think if you could sub yourself in and be Steve Austin in that situation, it's like the apex of wrestling pretty much. It's WrestleMania's main event. You're against The Rock. You come out in your hometown and the crowd's just going ballistic. I think like that, like the entrance especially, like that would be just like, oh my god. So I think that, yeah, probably replacing Austin in that match, that'd probably be my answer. Like I could say something like, oh, I don't even know. I could replace Punk at Money in the Bank 2011. Like it's probably, that answer probably fits with my like wrestling story better. But nah, just all time, it have to be probably Austin at 17 or like Hogan at 18. Like, you know, you sub yourself in for Hulk Hogan and you're doing that stare down with The Rock and you've got the whole place, is flash bulbs going off. Like that's sick. That's sick.
Man, it was great chatting to you, man. It's been a cool podcast. It's good to get you on the show. I was going to say, where can people find you? Everybody knows where to find you. You're pretty much the wrestling community at the minute. Like you're the videos that everybody goes checks out, and everybody tries to tries to copy because you get a ton of views. But it's the elite. I think I'm the only person that doesn't try and copy your videos because I'm just here just shouting about wrestling as I have done in this podcast. But the Elitist on YouTube, I'll have your links in the description below. Iron, thanks for being on. It's been cool.
Yeah, no problem. No, thanks for having me. It's been a bunch of fun. I've always wanted to. Well, I thought it'd be cool if I came on this channel eventually. Yeah, I finally got around to it. Didn't let the people down. I thought that the chat we had was pretty good. Some interesting talking points. Hopefully I brought some value to the show. And yeah, check me out if you haven't already or something. And yeah, peace.
Definitely, man. I'll end the podcast here, and I'll give you the aftercare kind of stuff after.